History has sold you a lie. A queen reduced to eyeliner, seduction, and scandal. Cleopatra, the temptress who bewitched Rome's most powerful men. But that's not history. That's propaganda. The real Cleopatra was no idle beauty. She was one of the sharpest political minds of the ancient world. A ruler who inherited a kingdom on the brink of collapse, yet held the greatest superpower of her age at bay for 2 decades. This is her playbook. 3 timeless strategies for anyone who has ever faced impossible odds and needed to turn weakness into power. To understand Cleopatra's genius, you must first understand her crisis. She was the last of the Ptolemies, a dynasty of Greek rulers who had grown weak and corrupt. Egypt was drowning in debt to Roman bankers. The harvests were failing, and her own family was her greatest enemy. Her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, forced her into exile, stripping her of her throne, her army, and her allies. Cleopatra became a queen without a kingdom, a ruler without power. But even in exile, she kept her eyes on the horizon, because she knew that survival often belongs not to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. And then an opportunity appeared. In 48 BCE, Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, arrived in Alexandria. He came to settle Egypt's dynastic dispute. But Cleopatra knew that if she could reach him, she could change everything. There was just one problem: access. Caesar was surrounded by guards loyal to her brother. A lesser leader would have accepted defeat. But Cleopatra understood something crucial. In moments of desperation, boldness itself becomes a weapon. And so she devised her first play. The story is legendary. Cleopatra hidden inside a rug, carried into Caesar's quarters by a single loyal servant. Picture the scene. The great Roman general, weary from civil war, seated in his chamber. The guards part as the bundle is brought in. The cloth unrolls across the floor, and out steps the Queen of Egypt. Not frightened, not pleading, but calm, radiant, and utterly fearless. This was no act of seduction. It was pure strategy. By smuggling herself past her enemies, she solved her tactical problem of access. By appearing suddenly before Caesar, she secured a private audience no one could deny her. And by making such a daring entrance, she etched herself into his memory as a woman of vision, courage, and audacity. The lesson is clear. In moments that matter, don't just arrive. Make your entrance impossible to forget. You may not be sneaking past palace guards, but you will face your own titans, a life-changing interview, a room of skeptical investors, a boss who holds your future in their hands. The question is, will you shuffle in quietly? Or will you create an entrance that forces people to pay attention? Cleopatra's courage reminds us, your first impression isn't decoration. It's your opening move. But audacity alone wasn't enough. Cleopatra needed Caesar's trust, Rome's respect, and her people's loyalty. And so came her second play, mastering the art of language. Ancient writers tell us Cleopatra spoke at least 9 tongues. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler in 300 years to bother learning Egyptian, the language of her own people. That one choice won her their devotion. But she didn't stop there. She spoke Greek in her court, Latin with Caesar's generals. She could debate philosophy with scholars, discuss grain shipments with merchants, and outline military campaigns with soldiers, each in their own words. This was no parlor trick. It was power. By speaking directly, without interpreters, she built trust. She avoided the distortions of translation. She showed respect for her audience by meeting them in their own world. That is how influence works, not by demanding others adapt to you, but by proving you have done the work to understand them. Think about your own negotiations. Before you walk into the room, do you know their language? Not just their words, but their challenges, their values, their goals. If you speak the way they think, you're no longer an outsider. You become a partner. Cleopatra's genius wasn't only that she could speak many tongues. It was that she knew what every leader, every client, every audience wants to feel understood. But Cleopatra's greatest move wasn't made in private chambers or court debates. It was in the theater of public perception. She understood that power isn't just what you hold. It's what others believe you hold. And so she forged her identity into something larger than life. She merged her image with that of Isis, the most beloved goddess of Egypt. At festivals, she appeared dressed as Isis herself. On coins, her profile bore the symbols of divine authority. To her people, this was not mere pageantry. It was legitimacy. A foreign-born queen transformed into the living embodiment of Egypt's most sacred protector. To Rome, it was something else, an exotic, untouchable figure who carried the mystique of an ancient land. In both cases, it was strategy. She made herself not just a ruler, but a symbol. What symbol do you project? Are you the figure people trust to always deliver? The innovator who challenges the status quo? The steady hand in chaos? Every email you write, every presentation you give, every project you put your name on, it's all coinage. Together, it forges your reputation. And over time, that reputation speaks louder than you ever could. Cleopatra knew that perception was half the battle, and she mastered it. For 20 years, against the might of Rome, she held her throne, not with vast armies, but with intellect, audacity, and spectacle. Her enemies called her a seductress because they could not admit the truth, that a young woman, ruling alone, had outmaneuvered the greatest men of her age. Cleopatra's story isn't about romance. It's about survival. It's about using every tool at your disposal: charm, intellect, preparation, and daring to bend the odds in your favor. And that's why her lessons endure, because power isn't always about strength. Sometimes it's about strategy. If you want more forgotten playbooks of history's greatest minds, subscribe to the Sage's Playbook.